Welcome back to Hydroponics Daily with me, Dr. Russell Sharp. Today we're talking about a very common pest in hydroponics, houseplants and horticulture in general, and that is fungus gnats, or as they're also called, scarrid flies. Stick around to the end because I'll talk about an amazing new way of controlling scarrid flies that I'm inventing and developing here in the Eutrema laboratories. So I said scarrid flies, they all belong, there's a number of different species and they all belong to the Scaridae family. The most common one in the UK is Bradisia deformis. So there's two scientific names there for you already. It won't be that too heavy on scientific names, but I'm just putting them in there because I'm testing the AI bot that is summarizing all our podcasts. It's been performing extremely well. I've been very impressed with it so far, getting scientific names correct. And so I'm going to put about 5 scientific names in this one and see if it gets them right. So, as I said, the most common species of fungus gnat in the UK is Bradisia deformis. They all look exactly the same, though, and they all are treated and act in the same way. They've all got the same life cycle. It's just one will have a slightly different look. The leaves will be slightly different shape and stuff like that to the others. So as the name suggests, they eat fungus. So might on the face of it be not too much of a problem. However, they can also eat young roots. And if they're eating mycorrhiza, then they're also harming a friend of your plants. And so they thrive in damp, decaying compost and growing media. But you can also get them in inert media, because there will be fungus growing on it, algae growing on it that they can feed off. It's the larvae that are doing the feeding, so the maggots, because they're a fly, so the tiny little maggots that are doing the feeding, and they're attracted to the odour of damp, decaying growing media. You might not think your growing media is decaying, but a cocoa, compost, peat, it will be decaying if it's waterlogged. So first method of control is obviously don't water every single day to container capacity. Do what's optimum for your plants. And then one area where my colleague Matt and I differ dramatically is I always pot from one size pot to the next, to the next, to the next as I fill the plants. That's to prevent transplant shock and also to make sure there's not too much wet, decaying compost around a young plant. Whereas Matt likes to put his seedlings into the pot they'll eventually end up. And I think that is a recipe for fungus gnats. But obviously there are advantages in that method. It makes sure they're never root restricted until they come into flowering, and you only get transplant shock once. So let's go into the methods of control. So let's go do the life cycle of fungus gnats. So it starts off as an egg, they pupate into a maggot, they emerge as a maggot, then pupate, and then they form this black fly that hovers around the plants, the surface of the soil, and is looking for fresh plants to invade. And the populations can increase dramatically very quickly. So you can get thousands and thousands and thousands of fungus gnats, and it becomes as much of a problem for your plant roots as it is an annoyance. They become very annoying to have. No one wants to have flies around their grow room. And so the first thing that you should do is put out sticky traps. And obviously, as I said previously, black traps are the best, but because of economies of scale, yellow traps do just as well. And a top tip, get the big rectangle yellow sticky traps and then just cut them up and then stick them with the polybutane sticky stuff directly to the edge of the plant pots. And then fungus gnats will naturally get attached to them. As I said in the last episode, increase the airflow and the fungus gnats will just get whirled around the growing room. They won't be able to control where they go, and then they'll just get stuck on the trap. And then if you position your outflow fan close to the soil surface or below, they'll get sucked into it. They'll get sucked out of your growing room. Other, let's say, physical modes of control, you could put diatomaceous earth, or zeolites. These are like materials that fungus gnats don't like on the top of the soil surface, and this will put them off the scent of the damp growing media below, and they'll struggle to get through that to the growing media. They go by a number of trade names, but that's what they are. They're either zeolite or diatomaceous earth. The chemical control, you can go for a common insecticide like pyrethroids, pyrethrum. So that pyrethrum is from a African chrysanthemum, and then pyrethroids are chemically derived, different to this, slightly different. They're synthetic. There's a company called CX Horticulture who have a product called Tanlin, which is it's allowed to be used in certain countries. It's called Tanlin because if you spell it backwards, it means nil gnat. And so they sell it, don't know if they sell it as a direct fungus gnat killer, but that's what it's, certainly it's been sold as in the past. I believe the active ingredient is chitin or chitosan. I think it's chitin. We sell chitin and chitosan here at Eutrema at far higher concentrations, but we never recommend its use for fungus gnats control, even though potentially we could, because this is what the active ingredient in tannin is. I just don't see how there is a mode of action how chitosan or chitin can really give good control of fungus gnats. You can say that it stimulates chitinolytic bacteria and fungi in the soil that degrade the maggots, but that's a pretty long shot. We prefer to look at soil sterilants, so organic soil sterilants that will kill fungus gnats instantly, and then the use of yellow sticky traps. So if you're looking for a soil sterilant that can be used in hydroponics, get in touch with us. We don't recommend it for houseplants because it's hazardous for use. So we don't like to recommend hazardous products for houseplants. But when they can be used safely and can be used in an organic system in horticulture and hydroponics, then that's where we recommend them. In a houseplant situation, I'd probably go for either a nematode or a parasitic mite. So a couple of good scientific names to test the AI bot. The biological nematode that's used is Stenarmia. I can't say it. Stenarmia feltinae. Sternema feltinae. No, I can't get this right at all. Anyway, that nematode. It's the nematode that's used for all fly-based pests. So if you've got, and also a lot of beetle-based pests, I think, as well. So it's a very common nematode. The actual strain might be different for different pests. The problem with nematodes is they have to be applied at the correct soil temperature. So they don't work very well in the garden if it's cold, but in a grow room, they should work very well. And they're really good to get under a microscope and have a look, because you might think, oh, this is and you can see if they're alive or not. You just stick them in some water and you will see millions and millions of nematodes wriggling around if they're alive. I think it's BASF that makes them. I think they're made in England. It was one of the very first biological pesticides to be made. And being an English innovation, it was quickly sold off to a multinational company. And there are issues around supply. So the nematode that is good for slug control, Phasma habiditas hermaphrodita. They are off the top of my head, that one. People can struggle to get it in spring because the supply is so limited. So if you can get the nematodes, it might be worth trying that. The mites, the predatory mites that eat the maggots, they are normally available 24/7, 365. Common species there is Hypoaspis miles. I've grown that mite in the lab here as well. So you can culture it as well if you know what you're doing. So you can keep a ready supply. It is quite difficult though. And if you're not careful, you'll cultivate fungus gnats as well, and that's what you definitely don't want to do, because you have to put them in compost that is wet and then decompose in a bit and then culture them on the specific culture method and things like this. So yeah, maybe just buy that from the shop along with some nematodes. If you want to play around with some chitosan, we can supply with some chitosan, but I would probably go for a soil sterilant. I did say we're working on a new one. I've got this bit of a Heath Robinson contraption in the office, and it involves decomposing grow media that's kept purposely wet, and it's like a little trap below one of those traps that you would normally find in a delicatessen in a supermarket that electrocutes blue bottles. I've taken all the UV lights out of it that would normally attract blue bottles and kept it dark and damp, obviously keeping the moist grow media away from the electrical bits. And the idea is that the fungus gnats in the grow room get attracted to this really decomposing grow media, and then on their way down hit one of these wires and boom, get electrocuted. One of my colleagues who didn't know about this trap was just sat there having a rest, having a drink, and fungus gnat hit one of these electrical bars, and he got the shock of his life as it got electrocuted because he didn't know what it was. Obviously, that's not been commercialized yet. And if you don't know what you're doing, don't mess around with electricity and water. But certainly something we've enjoyed playing with here in the Eutrema labs when we've been testing it out. And that's that. So keep your grow media not too wet, What can others say? Doesn't seem to be affected by pH or anything like that. And that's about it, really. Fungus gnats, or scarrid flies. If you've got any other comments, please let me know. Please click the follow button if you've enjoyed this episode so that you get made aware of when there's another episode, and feel free to listen back to any of the previous episodes at your leisure. We've now done over 100 episodes of Hydroponics Daily, which is it's been a bit of a mammoth task, but it's been highly enjoyable. So we'll be going for some time yet, hopefully at least until the end of December. And I'm going to be doing a lot of episodes from events as well. So things like Green Tech, might even go to Cultivate in Ohio later in the year, and Grow Tech in Turkey. That's another one we're going to. We'll go to not Fruit Logistica. There's one in Spain anyway. We'll probably go into in Madrid. So until then, till tomorrow, Tuesday. Thank you very much for listening. That's been Hydroponics Daily.